everybody, happy Thanksgiving. I decided to do a fun kids craft this Thanksgiving for my class. I have 50 students. They're all 3 to 4 years old, and I decided to do something really extra special for them. I saw a project online that was just like a paper, something really easy and fun to do, but it was just a paper Pilgrims hat, and I really liked it and I really thought it was cute, but I thought, you know, we always do stuff in paper. I want them to have something that they can actually keep and, you know, kind of like enjoy when they get home. So I decided to make one out of material. This video is going to show you how to make a felt Pilgrims hat. The sizing is all dependent on you, depending on, like, you know, how big you want the hat to be. This is a children's size, so if you want to follow my guidelines, that would make a hat that would fit perfectly for a 4-year-old. So if you want to stay tuned and find out how to make a really easy Pilgrims hat for 1 or 50, stay tuned, and here we go.
Okay, so what you're going to need to do is depending on how many hats you want to make, for me, I have to make 50 hats. I bought 2 yards, yesterday I bought 2 yards of really dark brown felt because they didn't have black. If you find black, go ahead and use black, but I couldn't find any black, so all I had was brown. And 2 yards equaled 24 hats, which this is my template. So since I have 50 kids, I needed to go back and buy more material. So I went back and bought 2.5 yards to make the rest of the hats today. So you're going to need, if you're only going to do a few, you might only need ½ yard. If you only want to make like 1 or 2, maybe 4, you only need like about ½ yard. If you're making enough for a regular class size, like 25 to 30, then you're going to need about 2.5 to 3 yards of felt. You're also going to need yellow felt and white felt. I already took those home because I made the buckles and the ribbons yesterday. But you will need about ½ yard to a yard of white and ½ yard of yellow to make the buckles. And with those, again, I just made a template out of cardboard. And so here's my template for the hat. I hand drew excuse me, I hand drew what I thought the hat would look like that, and I just cut it out of a piece of cardboard, you know, like a regular sized piece of cardboard. And then you're also going to need a pair of shears that are made from material. Don't try to use kitchen shears or just regular scissors, because it's not going to cut through the double felt. The felt's really thick and it's not going to cut through. It's just going to make your life a pain. So go ahead and use your material shears for this job. You're also going to need a cloth marker. This one's in white. It's just pretty much like a waxy pencil that you use on dark colored material so that you can see your lines. Since the material is so dark, if you try to use like a marker, a black marker, it's not going to show up and you're not going to see where to cut. So yeah, you're going to want one of these, and these are really cheap and you can just get them at any craft store. So what you're going to want to do is start by making sure that your edges line up. That's very, 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 very important that your edges line up, because if you start cutting and drawing and then you cut them out and the edges aren't going to line up, then when you go to sew them together, it's not going to line up either and you'll have a crooked hat. So make sure the edges are lined up. And I also recommend not unrolling the whole yard that you have, a whole, you know, set of material. Keep it, so I'll show you, keep it, you know, rolled like that, and only use a little bit at a time, and as you draw, start rolling from the other direction, so that way you don't have, you know, cloth everywhere, and you can make sure that they're lining up on the edges. So to start off, you're just going to need your template, and what I did is I lined it up here like this, and then you use your pencil to to do a marking. This isn't really that accurate because I'm not holding the cardboard, but you get the general idea of what to do. You're just using the wax, I'm sorry, you're using the waxy pencil to go ahead and make the mark. And as you can see the faint outline. And of course, if you're holding it with two hands, it comes out better. So I'm going to show you the pattern. Pretty much it's just reversed. So I went this way, and now I'm going to flip it around and go this way. And then I'm going to flip it around that way again. And then the very end that way again. And it'll make 4 across. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and mark these out, and then I'll show you what to do when you cut them. Okay, I wanted to show you my first 2 rows before it got too confusing looking. So pretty much what you want to do is maximize the space. So right now this kind of looks confusing, but if you just focus on one row at a time, it'll make more sense. So each row has 4, and like I said, I don't know if it's called inverse, transverse, whatever, you're flipping it, okay? So you're going to start here, and then you flip it. And I like to make sure that it's to the edge, okay? So you flip it, make sure it's at the edge, you flip it again, okay? Flip it again for the end, okay? So when I came over here, I did the same. So for my second row, I started where this is the bottom of the hat, I started at the top of the hat, okay? So I did the top of the hat, flipped it, you know, flipped it, flipped it, flipped it over here, okay? So then that's how my rows are going to be. It's going to be the bottom of the hat, top of the hat, bottom of the hat, top of the hat, until I get to the very, very end, okay? So that's going to maximize the most space. I didn't do this on the last material that I used yesterday, and what ended up happening was I had big circles of just wasted material that I had not utilized. So this actually works out better to use rows of 4, and again, your fold is right here, okay? So you're going this way, all right? And you're doing rows of 4, and then you're just alternating them, okay? So you're flipping them this way, and then you're also alternating them as you go, okay? So bottom of the hat, top of the hat, bottom of the hat is going to be my next one. So I'm going to put mine down, and do you see how it fits? Make sure that you're not hitting any of the other spaces, but that you're still not leaving giant gaps, okay? So that's where my next one's going to be, and then I'll just flip it. Do you see what I mean? Until I have the next row planned out, okay? And I'm also going to start folding, okay? So that's going to be my first fold like this, and then I'm going to pull it across the table, so that way I'm always working pretty much in the same spot, okay? Make sure you smooth out any wrinkles before you start drawing your templates. Okay, so I'm done. I made 7 rows, which is going to give me 28 hats. With my 24 from yesterday will make me a little bit over 50. And this again is 2.5 yards, and as you can see, I have about 2 rows left that I could have done. So if you want to make it for a class of 30, make, you know, the rest of the 2 rows, and you're good to go. Yeah, so this is what it looks like all laid out, and I'm going to roll it back up and start cutting. What you're going to want to make sure before you start cutting is that, again, you're lined up and that you're cutting one at a time. Don't try to do some funny shape. Take your time and cut one at a time. Okay, so I cut my first piece, and this is the piece that has the seam. So what you're going to want to do, don't open it up and cut. It won't be precise enough, okay? Or they won't match back up. So make sure it's level, and then take your scissors and cut the very, very, very end off so that it's 2 pieces, okay? And you're going to do that with every single one that's on this one side that has the fold over seam, okay? Alright, so I'm home now, and I'm really sorry about the lighting, but it's what we're going to have to work with. So again, this is my template for my hats. And then what I did is I made a template. After I made this template, I just took a piece of cardstock and I looked to see where I wanted to put my potential like ribbon. So maybe you can see this better. Okay, so that's my hat, and then I'm going to have a white ribbon, and then I wanted to have a buckle. Okay, so I just measured it to see what would look nice. Once I sew it on, I'm going to cut the excess off. So make sure, you know, don't measure it from the top, because if you measure it from the top, it'll be too small and it won't go all the way across on the bottom. So you're going to want to measure it from the bottom and then cut the excess off. Yeah, so this is just what I did. You can do that for, you know, make it up yourself. I don't really have the dimensions for this, but I think it's like 1.5 inches or something. And this is like a 3.5, I don't know, square. So the idea, and I have all these cut out already, is that the white strip would go down, then the buckle, like that. And then I bought some gold thread, and I'm going to use my sewing machine, and I'm going to just take the first layer. So I'm going to separate the 2 layers that I cut, and I'm going to sew on the accessories first. So I'm just going to take it, and I think I'm just going to go over, up, down, 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 over, like that. So it secures it. Nothing fancy. This is, you know, I have 50 to do, so I'm not going to worry about doing anything super fancy. If you only have a couple to do, you might want to hand stitch it, or if you don't have a sewing machine, or maybe do a fancy stitch of some kind. But I'm not going to be going elaborate with this. I want it to stay on. That's all my main goal is. And then once I get all of those done and attached, then I'm going to line these back up, and nothing fancy with this either. I'm just going to do a stitch, well, not the bottom, but I'm going to do a 3-sided stitch and then leave the bottom open so you can actually wear it as a hat. And that's going to be the hat. Okay, so I'm going to start out with my sewing machine. This is a Singer machine. I think it's called a Brilliance. And what I'm going to do is take my 2 pieces of felt and separate them so that I'm only working with the top piece. And then I'm going to take my white strip and place it over the felt so that it lines up with the bottom corners reaching both edges of the felt. I also did not use the gold thread because it just did not work with my sewing machine. So I'm using black thread here as well. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to start my stitch, and it's not going to be very precise, but it'll do. And you just want to run it along as thinly as you can to the other edge of the material, but don't go all the way through. You want to make it a continuous stitch. So go ahead and pick up the foot of your machine and replace it and continue stitching along the edge of the hat. And again, you're going to pick it up and then place the foot back down and do the lengthwise again. Again, making sure that your stitch is as straight as it can be, as well as thin. If you make a mistake, it's no big deal. You can just backtrack a little bit, either cut the thread and start over, or you can just use the reverse button and go back to fix whatever mistake that you have made. Okay, so I am just about done here. I've stitched all the way around the white strip, which is what you want to do to make sure that it's secure. So as you can see, I've done that already. And now I'm going to clip the extra strands of thread and get started on the buckle. Okay, so as you can see, here's my buckle. And the buckles were kind of hard to cut the middle out, so they're not exactly precise. And so I'm going to trim it up just a little bit so that it's just more pleasing to the eye. It doesn't look as crooked. And then I'm going to find a position for the buckle that looks most natural. Alright, so I'm going to start by doing the inside of the buckle loop, but you can also start on the outside, and to be honest, most of the other hats that I did make, after I got used to making them, I did end up just doing the outside first and then I did the inside. But it's really up to you. Either one works out just fine. They both, either way it'll turn out exactly the same way. So with the outer and the inner sides of the buckle, you're going to want to stitch as close to the edge as possible so it's not as noticeable. If you don't stitch fairly close to the edge, it will really take away from the look of the buckle. So here I am, I'm just going to cut the thread that I used for the inner and then trim it up a little bit, and then I can do the outer side of the buckle. Also for me, you don't need to cut the underside of the material with all the thread, but I don't know, I guess I'm a little bit persnickety about things like that, and so I cut the underside as well, even though it's the inside of the hat and you're never really going to see it. Alright, so pretty much almost done with the hat, just going across the very outside of the hat, working with material like this, and also working as close to the edge as possible. If you see that the material's kind of bunching up underneath the foot of your machine, go ahead and stop and reposition the foot on top of the material so that you don't sew over a crinkle, which will not look good at all. And that's what I'm doing right there. There was a crinkle, so I stopped. I picked up my foot to make sure that the material is smooth, and I finished it off. Alright, so the next step is going to be cutting off the excess, not only the excess thread, but you're going to be cutting off the extra little wings on the white parts of the hat for the ribbon. So for this, I just turn it over to line it up to make sure that I'm only cutting exactly what I need to, and I just use my sharp thread scissors and I just snip it off. Make sure you're using really sharp scissors for this, because especially with felt, it's extremely thick. So regular scissors just really doesn't do a good job. It's not only harder to use regular scissors, but it doesn't make a clean line as well either. It kind of frays the material and doesn't look as nice. So make sure you have some really good shears. Alright, so now it's time to add the backing on. Remember to use the same two pieces that you cut out. So hopefully when you cut out your material, you had doubled it up, so that way you're cutting two pieces exactly the same at the same time. When you go to sew, make sure you have the corners lined up. And for me, I started about an inch in from the edge. And as you can see here, I'm just going back and forth using the reverse button to strengthen the stitch there, because my kids are going to be playing with their hats a lot. I know that they will. And I want to make sure that that's reinforced so that when they, with continued use every day, they won't fall apart. So going back and forth a few times with the thread will allow that to be a very sturdy stitch. So I did that about inch in from the material, so that way the hat's a little bit more sized, and it'll fit their head properly and it won't be too big. If you're doing maybe an adult-sized hat, go ahead and just do the exact dimensions of the corners, and that will fit an adult head, at least a woman's average head, it'll fit. So, as you can see, I'm just doing 3 edges of the hat, just following along with the foot as my guide. I'm repositioning the material here just to make sure that it's lining up. If it doesn't line up 100%, you can always go back and trim off what doesn't line up. When you get to the white ribbon part again, try to go over that same line that you had done previously, so that way you don't have a double line going across the white, especially because that's going to be very noticeable. So again, I'm at about 1 inch into the material from the ending, and I'm going to make my reinforced stitch right there at the end to make sure that it's nice and sturdy for the kids to play with. And again, on your sewing machine there should be a reverse button. It usually looks like either it has an R on it, or it'll show like an arrow that kind of looks like it's turning backwards. That's the reverse button, and you just hold that down and press the pedal and it should reverse for you. Alright, that is the extent of the hat. You are all done. That's it. We did 3 sides, so the 4th side on the bottom is open for you to wear. And that is done.